Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to call our meeting to order on April 9th at 5:01. I, as always, wanted to do it like a super quick welcome to all of you. I just wanted to extend my gratitude to you for your unwavering commitment. We have heard from a lot of you during the week, and I wanted to start the meeting today by just recognizing and thanking the staff because they have been working really nonstop to be able to do what we did this week on behalf of public education. So the other thing I wanted to say is I want you to strongly advocate for the passage of 454. So if you haven't sent an email yet, please do so. And just really to congratulate yourselves because it was a big undertaking to get both the backing of the secretary and the AG. And both Sue and Chelsea had a lot to do with that this week. We had a good meeting with them. So I just wanted to, I know there's a lot going on. A lot of people want to be talking about it. We are here to support you, but mostly I just wanted to say thank you to everybody, especially our staff. So with that, let's get started. And our first item on the agenda is to the signing of the Les Bill homes. Well, I'm actually stopped jumping now. We just came back, so we were at the State House this morning. I'm a little accelerated, I guess. You okay with the agenda? Sorry, any reviews to the agenda before I move? Good. Okay. So let's just move because we have our guests with us. So let's move into the request from the Les Bill Homes. They're here to do a small presentation and see if we have questions. So
would you like us to admit Mira Weinberger?
Yeah, that would be
okay.
Great.
Okay. I will hit admit. Here we go.
Hi, Major. I know you're going to Major, but I'm so used to that. But hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. Welcome to this is the Vermont School Presentation Board. We're so excited to have you here. We have a really packed agenda today, so we wanted to open it up with you. So the floor is yours.
Okay, excellent. And can you remind me how long have you slated for this?
So I would say 15 minutes.
Okay, great.
Is that okay? Does that?
Yeah, that's great. I have a really short PowerPoint presentation that let's see if I'm able to. It says sharing's not turned on and sending a request.
Amy will let you share in a minute.
Okay, great.
Or Sue. And I'm gonna jump introductions because I think it will take away from your time. Yeah. But you can see the faces from across the state, the 22 regions. So welcome.
Yes. Great. No, I'm so great. I've never been with the association before, but I'm certainly worked with many or a number of your members, and very grateful for the work that you do, and understand that you have you're working at a challenging time. I see here I repurposing. I did not change the slide here, but what I wanted to show you was this. Here's what Let's Build Homes is. We are a new coalition. We just launched at the beginning of January. Really, it is a coalition that believes that we have a terrible shortage of homes in Vermont as a result of really decades now of state and local land use decisions and other decisions that have made it just too difficult to build homes. And as a result, we have a scarcity of homes, and the cost of housing has gotten unacceptably high. We see this directly in various housing metrics, like an unprecedented level of homelessness, one of the highest homelessness rates in the country. We see it in the fact that more than half of Vermont renters are rent burdened, and a quarter of them are paying more than half their income in rent. It's gotten so bad that the housing scarcity that is putting pressures on our workforce, and this is contributing to major challenges in our healthcare system. There was a big report that came out last summer that said the most significant thing that could be done to fix our healthcare problems was to build more homes. I think it's also from my perspective, some of the challenges that you are having, that some of the challenges that all of our educational institutions are having, is a function of this as well. We have become a place where it is very hard for nurses and teachers and construction workers and young families and aging families that want to stay in their community and downsides. All of them are having real challenges that are living in our communities and finding a way to afford to live here. So that's what we're trying to do. The coalition includes more than 200 organizations that share that understanding of the problem and believe this is a problem that we can fix. These stats are a little bit old now, and so we now have more than 700 individual Vermonters in all 14 counties who have signed on to this as well. This next slide, I think, really kind of captures the challenge and what our goal is, how we think we can fix this. The slide on the left shows in blue our housing production rates going back to 2012. If that slide continued back another 10 years beyond that, you'd see housing production rates at about that level as well. And on the right, you see what the Vermont Housing Finance Agency projects is the level of new housing production that we need if we are going to deal with this scarcity and address the worst impacts of our housing shortage. And it is, roughly, what's being shown there is a range. The lighter part of the green bars is a range.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
The slide that is showing is just showing the cost per unit.
No, it's showing the number of units being created every year. And it's showing that whereas going back to 2012, we have been producing between 2 and about 3,000 homes a year. We need to be producing more like 6,000 homes a year.
I don't think we're seeing the slide that you're describing.
We're seeing slide 6 in your deck.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Sorry.
That's so weird. What's showing up on my screen as sharing is different. Let me.
Yeah. Can you try to share again? Sorry.
I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
No worries.
Are you seeing now something that says "Let's build homes"?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
There we go. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for interrupting. So this was the summary of what the coalition has grown into. This shows on the left what we have been building in housing, on the right in green, the HFA's projection of what a healthy rate of housing production would look like. It's basically a doubling of our current levels. And on the right, you see that this is a relatively recent phenomenon. If we go back to the 1980s, we were kind of growing at basically approximately three times the rate that we have been for the last 20 years. And the Let's Build Homes effort is an attempt to get back on track, to get back to these higher levels of production. It's an ambitious goal. It is a goal that we think is achievable. And I say that, from having served in that role as mayor, we did focus on housing for 12 years. We increased housing production rates about fourfold from the beginning to the end of the time I was in office. And we look at that historic data and think, you don't have to go back in Vermont's history that far to find a time that we were accomplishing these goals. We launched in January, and this is what our initial focus is on in the legislature and in other settings. One of the big cost drivers that has made it hard to build homes in Vermont is the cost of public infrastructure associated with housing. We have a proposal you may have heard of, and there may be questions about. I want to leave time for that. That would allow new projects to pay for themselves for a period of time using the new taxes, a large percentage of the new taxes being generated by those homes to build the infrastructure to make these homes possible. As a previous slide shows, too many of these projects are just never happening. This is one of those threshold issues that could help more projects get built. We, as a coalition, are absolutely committed to continuing to invest public resources in permanently affordable housing. And we've weighed in numerous times during the session already on those spending decisions. I do think what differentiates Let's Build Homes from past housing efforts is that we don't think the solution is just focusing on affordable housing. We think that we need more homes of all shapes and sizes for Vermonters of all income levels if we're really going to get at this affordability challenge. Certainly, I was just down at one of the Burlington's homeless shelters here. I mean, we have tremendous need among our most vulnerable, but we are even in a situation where hospitals are struggling to recruit doctors to the state because doctors can't find homes that meet their needs and what they're expecting when they're trying to be recruited to Vermont. So we think all homes are sacred, and we support the building of all of them. These other issues, it gets a little bit wonky, and I'm not sure we need to go into this here. We're going to be a voice engaged on these technical issues, whether it's Act 250 or the way in which projects get appealed, or the way in which many municipal decisions can make it too hard to build. We intend to be a voice at all levels, and we are already impacting some municipal housing decisions as well. So that's my best shot at summarizing what we're about. I know we're almost out of time, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I'm hoping that if you are interested in this, you will check out our website too at letsbuildhomes.org and consider signing on as many other individuals and educational institutions have.
Thank you for the presentation. Do you want to stop the share so that we get a chance to see everybody in case somebody has a question there? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. I know there were a number of people that had questions the last time, so I'm seeing some. Jim, you're up first.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think one of the discussions we had last time around, we were trying to understand the nature of the organization. From how you presented it, it sounds as if you're really trying to deal with the barriers to getting this stuff done. You're not actually in the, you're not associated with trying to build projects or anything, just trying to pave the way. Is that an accurate way to present it?
Yeah, I think you should understand this as an advocacy organization that is trying to weigh in on policy at the state, regional in the sense that we are making these Act 250 decisions at a regional level through our regional planning commissions and the local level. We are finding ourselves, we do get asked by communities for input into how they can actually pursue specific projects. So I think we have already started playing something of a role of making connections and matching up different organizations and different resources, but we are not builders ourselves. This is an advocacy organization.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I'll ask the same question that I raised last time. I read through your materials and I noticed that you support or advocate the use of, I think you're calling them HIT districts, which look an awful lot like TIF districts, only with a slightly different structure. And I'm skeptical of diverting education fund money to economic development projects. I think that's more a task of other funding sources. There's enough demands on the education fund. So I've got a question, and then sort of maybe you can address, talk about my concerns. My question is, how much money are current TIF districts diverting from the education fund?
Great, thanks, Michael. And it's one of the reasons I was excited to come talk to you. Is I thought this group fair to have questions about this, and this is the issue of tax increment financing districts is certainly one that there is polarizing debate and discussion about. And what we have proposed is actually quite different than the traditional TIF district in some significant ways. That's it. I'll answer your question directly. The state joint fiscal office puts an estimate. I think in the most current year, they said that the impact on the education fund of all of the 7, I think, or 8 Vermont TIF districts was $5.5 million approximately. I will say the way they do that methodology, it assumes it's essentially a worst case scenario. It is assuming that there is no that all of this development would have happened anyways, and that it's a pure diversion. That those of us who have worked with TIF districts, who have worked on these projects, firmly believe that the kind of Rorschach test on this is those of us who worked on these projects have seen the grand list grow dramatically and very disproportionately related to non-TIF district downtowns and other parts of our municipalities. So we think this actually adds to the grand list significantly, and that this is taxes that wouldn't have existed without the TIF tool happening. These projects. So there's that debate. Let me say then, going beyond that debate, which I don't, a lot of reasonable people can disagree on. We have tailored this proposal, what we propose to the legislature, as being much narrower than those traditional TIF districts, where you would have a whole district where the increment would be captured. And I do think those districts would capture some background growth that would have happened anyways. It's quite accurate to say. In this case, these projects that are eligible for using, taking this TIF financing, essentially, it will only be the project itself that is project based. So the only funds that will be captured are those that are generated by this project. So this is new increment coming onto the grand list as a result of these projects. And from day one, there will be new revenues flowing into the ed fund. And once the public infrastructure is paid off, then you have a substantial new boost to the ed fund going thereafter.
Thank you. Dan MacArthur and then Emily.
Yeah, I guess I have 2 questions. Are we being asked as an organization to basically sign on to this, to become supporting members or whatever? And I guess, Flor, I have a question for you as well. If the answer is yes to that, then should we have a motion on the floor?
Yeah, that is the question right now, Dan, and we thought we would just have the presentation first, and then we would discuss that. We would have a motion on the floor and then discuss as a board. So this is just direct questions to Let's Build Homes, so that we wouldn't be us trying to answer and lobby for them. You know what I mean? We can have a discussion, but right now it's just direct questions to her. So if you have a direct
Certainly,
question
we would,
Ed,
to be
please.
clear, Let's Build Homes would very much welcome and be excited, of course, to have the organization involved, to have individuals, if there's not an ability to kind of get to consensus as an organization, we'd welcome you as individual members or individual organizations as well. And so that's part of why I'm here. I must say I'm glad to be here also, though, to try to answer questions like Michael's a moment ago, and to try to at least make sure there's good communication between us on this particular proposal, which is being considered by the legislature right now, and which actually did pass. Is getting some. It passed out of the Senate. It is getting some momentum. If there are concerns about it that I haven't fully addressed on this call, maybe we could have some ongoing conversation as well.
Thank you. Emily, Dan, you're okay? You had an extra question? Okay, so Emily, go ahead, and then we can wrap up.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I was just going to ask my fellow board members if we could not take action tonight. I still have a lot of questions, procedural, how we're using our vision, mission, and legislative priorities to guide our decision making. So I would ask just that we have set aside some time to dig into those before we make a decision signing off on this. Thank you.
Hey, any other questions while we have the expert on the room? I don't see any other hands. So we are really thankful for you being here today and for spending some time with us. We would have a discussion as a board and then
Yeah, great.
would hear
Thank
back
you.
from-
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Sorry for the technical screw up at the beginning. And totally, if you do decide that you're going to have some kind of more extended process on this, please, I would welcome some ability to hear more what the questions are and provide you with some additional materials in advance of your future deliberations. So thanks for this chance for this first introduction, and I look forward to talking more.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye. Okay, so now it's just the board. So we heard what Emily had to say. I don't know if people want to still talk about it right now, want to have separate time to decide procedure wise. I'm just looking for other thoughts. I was assuming we were gonna, have you guys had a discussion at the last meeting. I was assuming that we were gonna ask some questions right now, and then we would either decide to support the organization or not. Do I see any other hand? Linda.
Mark,
And
stand up.
I think my opinion is that we have so much on the ongoing that maybe we could shelve this again until next month. Not that it's not a good idea, but I'd like to do some more reading about it. I'm not sure I'm ready. I like Michael's question about where the money goes in the future. So my feeling would be not to do anything about it right now and maybe do a little bit more looking up and then come back to it next month.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Mark? Claude?
Well, I feel badly saying this now that Linda and Emily have said that, but I'm very, very comfortable with this. I think this is the right thing. I think it makes a lot of sense for our mission. I kind of do this professionally, so maybe I have an advantage to understanding it. But this is a great thing for the state of Vermont, and I'm really pleased they're doing this, and I think we should sign on.
Michael, and then Jim.
All right, I have some additional numbers. Moreau's number was certainly in the reasonable ballpark. Just to give you some ideas, TIF districts have already diverted, as of the end of fiscal year 23, which is the last number that there's a report, have already diverted over $68 million from the Ed Fund. And the total diverted over the lifetime of the projects, which is 20 years, will be, and that includes the amount already diverted, almost $205 million from the Ed Fund. This may be a great program. There's certainly a lot of need for housing and such, but my problem is diverting money from the Ed Fund. There are lots of good policies out there, but we need to push back on the idea that the Ed Fund is a source of funding for anything other than schools. So as long as they're relying heavily, which they appear to be from their website, on these tax incremental or housing incremental funding sources, I can't sign on.
Jim.
Totally understand Michael's concerns. At the same time, for instance, I'm on our select board, and last night we're trying to work on housing within our town, and we've been working on it for a long time, doing a whole lot of detailed work to try to get a project off the ground. Last night we were signing up, we're actually going out to developers at this point to try to partner and all. And I could just attest to the fact that, we're a lot of towns and other people in the state of Vermont talk about housing a whole lot, and it is really hard to get things done. I can totally attest to that fact. And just having a group like this that is, I think, a lot of reasonable people who aren't trying to make money off this, but they're trying to ease the ability of, getting to the point where we're actually building some housing I feel it's really important that we have, I was very pleased to see this group come to being. And I think it's important that we have voices like this because this is it's a massive problem in the state of Vermont. So.
Then, Emily, I'm going to let Barbara go first, Emily, because you had a chance, and then we go back to you. So, Barbara.
Yes, two things. I agree with Jim and with Mark about how important it is and why this is a very good group with very good people. But I have a question. Miro's answer to Michael's question about the TIF using Ed Fund dollars, diverting it, was that in summary, at the end of the day, there was more, the grand list grew, which means that there would be more money in the Ed Fund. Now, I'm trying to understand that, and maybe someone else can answer that, because if that takes care of that concern, which is a valid concern, then that would make a big difference. I still would, let me say this, I still would support it even if we were using Ed Fund dollars, because I think it's crucial that we do housing. But I also want to clarify that issue. Does that make sense? Does my question make sense?
Yes, your question makes sense, and I believe, yes. Let's hear what Emily has to say, and then go back to Mark. Emily? And then
Thank you. Just wondered if the Vermont School Board Association has a position about keeping public education dollars in public schools. And if we are going to support an organization that relies on TIF funding, I think that goes against that value. So we have to consider this very carefully. And I don't think we're ready to make the decision tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Emily. Mark?
I've been involved in a number of TIF financings through my economic development hat. And, like Miro said, you can have a lot of people on different sides of this because you don't see the long-term effects of this for a while. But I'm thinking Michael's numbers are what was committed to TIFs, but does not take into account the way the economic development created new commercial space, residential apartments, anything that added to the grand list, which is a statistic, you have to dig up later on down the road, all with the idea that you've grown everybody up. And it's just not that specific of the amount of money that went in for the TIF, diverting taxes. In theory, TIFs are a great thing for all communities. Hopefully it's a good project and it raises all boats. And that's the intent of it. I think TIFs are a great product if they're good projects. I hope that makes sense to Barbara or to Emily.
Okay, Michael, and then.
Yeah, but I could answer some of the questions there, and I mean, I hope I'm not misrepresenting what Moreau would have said, but I think it's accurate. The TIF districts will have generated about 60 million to the Ed Fund because a percentage of the money does go to the Ed Fund still. It's not 100%. I think it's either, it varies. It's varied over the years. I think it's 70, 75, or 80. Those are sort of typical numbers you would see that go to the TIF district, and the remaining amount does go to the Ed Fund. I don't think anyone knows the answer. I have my own skepticism about whether the growth in the grand list would have happened otherwise or not. There are certainly those who believe that the TIF districts were essential. I'm not one of them, but certainly it's reasonable to argue that. The other thing is that after the 20 or 25-year period, then the divergence stops and the full amount of the taxes go to the Ed Fund. So I think that's a fair representation of how that works.
Okay.
Probably given a better answer, but I think I'm being relatively neutral on my answer there.
So Neil?
Yeah, Flora, I think, folks have made a lot of good points this evening. I get the sense that this organization, well, A, is already established, B, is already sort of moving forward, and C, would like our participation, but our participation as supporters is not going to necessarily dramatically change the trajectory of that organization. And so I think given some of the, the things that board members have been talking about tonight, I'm not seeing a downside to delaying a decision on this. It allows us some time to work through some of the concerns, some of the issues. That organization is going to continue to move forward, right? They're still pressing their position with the legislature. And so, some additional time for reflection and consideration of this, I think is not unreasonable.
Okay, so we'll table this until the next meeting. We have a full agenda, and then we can all come prepare for our next meeting, and maybe we can develop some criteria to see how we best can do this. So thank you, Neil, and let's move to our next agenda item, which is our interviews. I believe I just have to get back. So we have to fill the vacancy of Kingdom South, right? I'm just going back to my.
Yes, Mark Kaufman resigned as a representative of Kingdom South. So there are 3 people that the board will be seeing brief interviews. Floor has prepared 2 questions to ask of them, and I think we're going to limit it to that because we have very limited amount of time.
Yeah. And we thought that we will keep the recording going for the interviews, and then we would go into a session, just the board members to decide without recording that. And the 2 questions are pretty simple. And so with that, is Abigail here? Abby here?
She's in the waiting room.
Okay. So we're going to stay in this right now, and then when we deliberate, we'll go to a separate room. But
So I'll admit Abigail Campbell.
yes. I don't see the window yet. Do you guys? Hi, Abby. Unless I'm not seeing. There she is. Oh.
Hi.
Hi, Abby. Welcome to the VSBA board meeting. Thank you for agreeing to be here with us. Sorry, we're running a few minutes late, but thank you for being interested in the Kingdom South region. We have 2 very simple questions, and we're interviewing 3 people so that you know. And the board then will go and deliberate, and we will get back to you. Okay.
Sounds good. Okay.
Okay, great. So the first question is, what did you believe are the core values of public education, and how do you see your role in upholding them as a school board member and as a region representative?
Well, I think ultimately the fundamental value of public education is it's available to all, and that distinguishes itself just fundamentally from other forms of education. And with that comes immense amounts of sort of like liabilities and financial liabilities and moral obligations, but also opportunities for the kids who, not only for kids who need a little bit more to access their education, but also for the kids who are more like would be considered like mainstream in a classroom. They also are learning important lessons as part of being a community that includes lots of different types of people. And my role as a school board member, I guess, or as a parent, I guess I don't know which hat I'm sort of wearing, but I guess as part of this, it's like as a school board member, I think that for the most part, it's making sure that the fundamentals and the sort of operational school is running correctly so that the content experts can do their jobs. Like I think fundamentally a school board, we used to say many years ago, like you hire and fire the superintendent, and that is your main job. You're also responsible for absorbing your audit and making sure that you are addressing any shortfalls in your sort of fiduciary responsibilities, because none of the content specialists can do their job to allow that wide breadth of students to access their education if the school is not running efficiently. And there's an opportunity cost. I'm a firm believer in like opportunity costs and how we use our finite resources.
Thank you, Abby. And the last question is, what particular skills or experiences are you hoping to share with us that will help you serve as a region representative for Kingdom South?
Sure. Well, I know you, Mark, has done a great job, I'm sure, of representing my area. Like, I believe strongly, I grew up in the Northeast Kingdom. I went to UVM and then left and returned with my sort of Midwest husband and 3 little boys to, be part of the community I was raised in, and did me a great service. And so I think I bring a really interesting perspective of being very much a child of this community. But at the same time, I've had a really wide breadth of experiences that allow me to sort of have a very, I've worked in the federal, as part of like, I've worked with the federal government and I've worked in electoral politics. And so just the sort of like understanding of the complex systems that are involved in the changing governance right now at the statewide level, I think just lends itself well. It's sort of why I decided to be again, I sort of the opportunity cost is for ourselves too. We also have only a finite amount of resources, but I think it's an important time to be part of the discussion in any way that I can.
Thank you, Abby. We are grateful for you being here today with us. And Mark and Sue and I will be getting back to you. Okay. Thank you for being here again.
Absolutely. Thank you for everybody willing to continue to do this important work. It's, we all make the trade-offs, and it's an important discussion. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Okay.
Rani is on the way in.
All right. Sorry, it's a little rush board, but we have a long agenda. Waiting for cyberspace to transport our guest. Oh, are you here?
Only one.
Rani?
Hi. Trying to figure out how to get the video on.
Oh, okay. There you are. It's just.
I did. Okay. Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Welcome to the VSBA board. We are a little pressed for time because we have a lot in our agenda today, but so I'm sorry that we took a little long to get a little later than we had asked you to come in. We have 2 questions for you, and then Mark, Sue and I will be getting back
good.
To you. So the first question is, what do you believe are the core values of public education, and how do you see your role in upholding them as a school board member and as a region representative?
I think the purpose of public education is educating all students and having strategies that support all students where they are. Having been a teacher, a principal, a superintendent, I feel like I've, seen, such a range of backgrounds and needs, and, so both giving students who want sort of a stronger or more traditional academic program what they need, but also finding ways to really meet and serve, this very changing population that we have of students who'd come in needing more support or different support. And I feel like what works for students just has to be, if you sort of use that as your guiding star. I mean, schools are so big, they're so complicated, there's so many issues, but if you really keep student success at the forefront, then that's your guide. I retired in 2020. I was in Vermont, I was a superintendent in St. Johnsbury, and then I wanted to finish my career teaching because I had been a teacher all my life, and I really wanted to walk out the door with that. So I spent 2 years at Craftsbury Academy and sort of took a break, COVID, so many things, but I just, I have a passionate love for schools. I've spent my professional life in them. And I felt that, the school board was a way for me to continue that commitment. So I'm on the Hazen Union Board, and I'm now on the OSSU board. School boards, I think, are hard. I've seen that, from the lens of being an educator, because it's a different kind of leadership than you have in so many things where you just say, well, this is what I want, and then you tell people what to do. It's more of a sort of culling and giving feedback. But I think, community support and input about how schools work is essential. And, we're just in a huge time of change. I mean, just looking at the change in governance in Vermont, and the change in our federal landscape, which is going to completely transform what schools do and how they do them. It just felt like a really good time to put energy and support into schools. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you. And the second question is and you spoke a little bit to this, but what particular experiences and skills are you hoping to share with us that will help you serve as our region representative for Kingdom South?
A deep interest of mine in schools is underserved students. I was principal of a high school in the Boston Public Schools, and got very good training. I got a CAGS in educational leadership from the UMass Boston, and I really felt I got great training in just understanding poverty and how poverty fits into the profile of students and schools. And I've been volunteering in a class at Hazen that is for underperforming students, and students who are really just struggling with staying in school. And I think that's really on my mind. All of the students who are really struggling with being successful, because of the ways that they come to school unprepared for sort of traditional learning. At the same time, I have a PhD in mathematics. I was a math professor before I was a teacher. And I have a lot of interest in supporting students who really do want traditional academic challenges. So I sort of feel like I'm interested in sort of both of the ends of, and I mean, there's a lot in the middle too of what I see as sort of challenges for schools.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us, Rani.
Yes.
We'll be getting back to you.
No problem. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. And thank you very much for, considering me as a member. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Have to figure out how to get out of here.
Yeah, just the little red door
at
the bottom.
Little red button.
Thank you. All right, board. So unfortunately, Clayton is not able to be with us because he had negotiations, but he connected with Mark, and Mark is going to share a little bit about him, and then we're going to go into our deliberation little session.
Thank you, Flor. Clayton Cargill, I've worked with for over 8 years now, and he's been the board chair of our SU for most of that period of time. And he's done a very good job pulling a bunch of cats together that were forced into Act 46. So he shows good leadership skills. I know that's not what we're all about. But what I am impressed about with Clayton, and why I encourage him to look into this, is his staunch support of public education. His school, which is a K-12, keeps getting slated to be closed, and he feels so strongly that their community and the kids that he pulls from choice districts around to go to his high school is important, and he wants it to stay in place as a public venue. We all value St. J Academy in its own way, but public education, there needs to be some choices around high school, and Clayton is all about public education. He's very passionate about this, and he's a really thoughtful, smart guy. I think a lot of Clayton, and I think he would do the board well. I'll leave it at that, but I do have a summary of the three if you wanted.
Okay, and we had some documents in our packet. I'm just gonna remind the board, Article 7 of the bylaws states that in the event of a regional representative position is vacant, such a vacancy may be filled by the board of directors after consultation with the regional representatives, that would be Mark. So let's move into stop the recording because we are done
Recording.
Okay, go ahead. I'm looking for a motion to appoint representative for Kingdom South.
I make a motion that we appoint Clayton to the representative from Kingdom South.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Suzanne. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention? Okay. Okay, you get that in the minutes, Amy? Tara abstained. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So with that, I'm not going to give you a break quite yet, but we're going to move into, we have a little board training. We went back and forth with Sue to leave this on or not leave this on, but we are a learning community and this is exciting for us. So Debbie put quite a bit of work so that we can share it with our region, but also so that we can be examples and lifelong learners like we try to tell our boards, not just try, but we lead by example. So this is our time to learn together, and I'm gonna give it to Debbie so that she can provide us with this short training.
Thanks, Flor. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen okay? Perfect. So I know that you are all familiar with DQS by now. So consider this as a review as we briefly remember how we got here today and before we start looking at what's ahead of us. So to do this, we need to start with Act 127. In 2022, the legislature passed Act 127, an act relating to improving student equity. Included in this legislation was a requirement of school districts to meet a new set of standards called District Quality Standards, or more commonly called DQS. You may recall that there are, in fact, 3 categories of standards. 1, business operations, 2, facilities management and safety, and 3, governance. As school board members, we are directly responsible for the governance standards. The AOE relied heavily on input from school board members to draft the governance standards. In response to requests from the AOE, the VSBA convened a task force of 11 school board members from around the state. Phil Gore, my predecessor, staffed the task force along with Sue, and some of you served on this task force as members, including Neil, Mark Koenig, Gaston, and Michael. After months of deliberation and research, the task force proposed 14 governance standards. The AOE largely accepted these draft standards with very few changes, really only minor changes. So obviously this task force did a phenomenal job. In June 2023, DQS was adopted, and now we have Rule Series 100, which you see an image of on the screen. The DQS will take effect on July 1st of this year, which is just about 3 months away. As board members, we will be responsible for ensuring that our boards are in compliance with these governance standards, or Section 113 of DQS. Those are our standards. They will be our work. These 14 standards are not overly prescriptive, but rather are general principles of good governance. They provide guidance for boards on how to focus on the things that matter most in their work. The standards were developed with best practices of good governance in mind, taken from the Iowa Lighthouse studies, among many other studies. So let's briefly review what these standards are. They are grouped into 3 areas. The first area is governance priorities. Governance priorities means, what does the board deem to be the critical area of focus and progress for the superintendent and the school system? So as you can see on the screen, the global statement of this area reads, through an equity lens, the board of each SU, SD, and, if applicable, of each member school district within the SU adopts a vision and measurable goals to support continuous improvement and monitor student academic progress and wellness. A school board wanting to govern effectively will pay special attention to its priorities. If a board has not written down its priorities and clearly communicated them to the superintendent and to the community, how can the superintendent be held accountable for meeting the board's expectations for making progress? Clear and shared governance priorities are one of the cornerstones of effective governance. And that is what each of these 4 standards or sub-standards are addressing: setting, communicating, monitoring, and evaluating the district's priorities. The second area of governance standards are the governance protocols. Governance protocols mean what has the board agreed to do in terms of how they will do their work together and with the superintendents. So the global statement reads, the board of each SU, SD, and, if applicable, of each member district within the SU adopts, reviews annually, and revises as needed operating protocols for how it does its work, and annually reads foundational documents such as the Articles of Agreement. Part of the foundation of good governance is a commitment to agreed upon and written down protocols for how the board does its work. These board operating protocols, as they often are called, can reduce drama, avoid surprises, and help a board hold itself and the superintendent accountable for meeting the district's priorities and steering the district towards its vision. And that is what each of these 4 standards in this area addresses: how the board does its work. The third area are the governance processes. Governance processes means, what systems and steps will a board take to advance its work throughout the year? The global statement reads, the board of each SU, SD, and, if applicable, of each member school district within the SU establishes and follows inclusive, transparent, and predictable methods to conduct its work. Effective governance requires predictability for the board, superintendent, staff, students, and the community. When a board's processes are clear, known, and consistent, it increases confidence within the community and more thoughtful engagement among the board. And that is what these 6 standards in this area addresses: the different things that a board does or steps that it takes to advance its work and meet its responsibilities. So, in a nutshell, those are the standards, and a very quick look back at how they were created. So what happened next? Last year, in 2024, the AOE asked the VSBA again for help. This time they asked the VSBA to draft the proficiency scales for the standards. So Sandra, Kara Zimmerman, and I wrote draft proficiency scales for each of the 14 governance standards using a 1 to 4 scale in a rubric that was provided by the AOE. This rubric will be the tool that is used by all boards to self-evaluate their performance and compliance with the governance standards starting later this year. We then workshopped those draft scales with all of you, the VSBA board, at your retreat in Stowe last year. Many of you may remember that. At that retreat, a suggestion was made to reconvene the original task force, or as many members as possible, to review and improve the rubric with the draft proficiency scales. So last July, Sue and I met with a group of 7 school board members at the VSBA offices And again, some of you were part of that discussion. I think it was Mark Koenig and Mark Clough. So what we did that day was we went through all of the proficiency scales for all of the standards and we reworked them. We cleaned them up, we made them a little bit clearer and hopefully more easily understood. We strove to strike a balance between holding boards accountable without making it too difficult for them to achieve. That last draft of the rubric, the one that we worked on last summer with the proficiency scales, which you have in your board packet, went to the AOE on August 1st. We had hoped and had been told that there would be some more discussions with the AOE about the scales. They informed us that they would organize discussions with us and other groups who worked on the other standards in DQS. And that was supposed to happen last fall. And then it was postponed to the winter. And so far, nothing has happened. So just today, coincidentally, I received an email from the AOE saying that they hope to have an update available to all the contributors of the proficiency scales later this month in April. So we will wait and see and hope for the best. In the meantime, the AOE has advised us, the VSBA that is, to continue to reiterate to all boards that the goal of DQS is not for all districts or boards to achieve proficiency in all fields in the very first year. The AOE will review the results of the self-evaluations to, quote, determine state-level resources and technical support needed by boards, end quote. And then later in the DQS cycle, districts will be selected for more, for what they call an intermediate review based on student proficiency scores. So in plain language, what this means is that districts and boards that are less than proficient on their self-evaluations will not be subject to more intensive review unless they are also identified based on other student achievement indicators. The intermediate review will occur on a 3-year cycle, and we have been informed that no districts will be identified for an intermediate review in the first year. So that is where we stand as of 6:13 p.m. on April 9th with the governance standards. And I'm happy to take any questions or see if Flora, you would like to open the floor for discussion.
Yeah. I would like to open the floor for discussion, and just to give some context to the board members, the reason we thought this was important is at a time where, we want to make sure that people understand the job that we do, and a time where we are questioning how many school board members there will be in the state, and at a time where not everybody understands the work that we do. It's important for us to know, to make sure we are ready to take this on. So do you have questions for Debbie? This is really a refresher. I know that some of you know this deeply and are already in the process of doing this with your boards, but this is our learning opportunity. So any questions for Debbie or comments? Okay, don't raise. Oh, Emily.
Sorry, my hand's raised. Debbie, could you repeat that last part? I just didn't catch it about the student performance indicators and indicators of the board. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's an important point to understand. So I'll give you the plain language as they gave it to me today in the email. Is what they're saying is that districts and boards that are less proficient in their self-evaluation, so they'll do their self-evaluations using these proficiency scales. And if they're not scoring proficient, they will not necessarily be subject to more intensive review unless the district is also having challenges and they've been identified based on other student achievement indicators.
Can I ask a follow-up? This is Emily again.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that is a way to tie board stability or governance to student achievement. Is that kind of what they're saying, to create that relationship?
That's what it appears to be. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And that makes sense given the research that went into making these or drafting these governance standards is that highly effective school boards or boards that practice effective governance tend to see better outcomes for their students. Their students have better results.
Thank you, Debbie. Mel, and then Gaston, and then Megan.
A couple points. One is if you could share that, if you're allowed to share that with us, I think that would be helpful. I'd love for our board to see that same slide presentation. And thank you for being so succinct. To that point, I do find it, to Emily's point, interesting that it's only there'll only be repercussions, I guess, for boards if the test scores, for example, go down. It kind of feels like there needs to be support even if the test scores are great. But more importantly, I think what really stands out to me is the one little line that says stays in touch with their local governance or the local government. And I think last I saw, everything points towards, much bigger districts and still 5 members. And I'm just really curious what local government means in a situation like that. It's easy for me to say I know which town I'm from, but that's not going to be the case anymore. So that's all.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. It's like, So I was just going to say to Mel in that question that you were asking, Mel, that this provides a really good roadmap for boards. So even if there's no repercussions, only if the scores, is a really good guide for boards that are not necessarily organized like that yet. So I would just say that. Gaston and then Megan.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie, for the presentation. I guess my question is for you and for the VSBA staff. When is this going to be available for distribution? I ask because 1 July is fast approaching. At our board, what's that? Our board met last night and we're trying to decide on what our goals will be once 1 July sort of hits. And it sure would be nice to have this document, the standards and the chart, the self-evaluation tool, so that I can use that with my board ahead of 1 July. I just would hate for this to become public distribution after 1 July. It really should be no later than 1 June. I've not seen it. So Flora, you look puzzled. I don't know if it's public now.
I'm puzzled because it's posted on the website, but I'll let Debbie answer this. Yeah.
So the standards themselves are public, and they are, and I'm sure you've seen them everywhere, or I hope you have at least. What isn't public because they haven't been finalized are those proficiency scales in that rubric, which you also refer to. That is a challenge for all of us because those scales how could we start doing a self-evaluation if we don't have scales to use? So we're all in that same boat, Gaston, in terms of wanting to see the final version of the scales. And I just can't answer the question of when we will see them. We were hoping to see them way before now, but there hasn't even been any feedback on the work that we did last summer. That's the last iteration of the scales as far as we know. Whether they changed anything to that draft, I have no idea. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And sorry, Gaston, that's why I look puzzled because we have no control on that, but we still have to, be ready in July 1st. So, Megan.
Yes, I was doing retreat planning this morning. So this is very timely, Debbie, because Debbie helped my board last year kind of do a first draft. So is it unreasonable I know it's not for publication, but my board will be doing our self-assessment at the end of May, and then we're not going to do another one for a full year. So maybe that's good for me because we'll do a draft. But should we should we just not use the rubric that you've provided, Debbie? Is that a good starting point? What should we be informing others in the region and other places to be thinking about? Because when I went through this, I'm like, oh, that's a good start. What to be thinking about beyond, like my board just went through and answered the question, yes, like on a 1 to 5 scale without anything to think through.
So are you, when you talk about the rubric, Megan, are you talking about the one
The
that we
draft one
used
in the
at your
board
training?
packet. The
The one in the
one in the
board
board
packet?
packet, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't use that.
I would hesitate to use it.
Okay.
They haven't, we've had no comment and no feedback on it at all. And so I would, as a board chair myself, I wouldn't feel comfortable using those draft scales. I think I would, because what if
What if they change?
What if they change? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't think I would use them. I think what the VSBA has decided to do, Sue, do you want to add to that?
No, you can finish your thought and then
Well, what the VSBA has decided to do and what I'm coaching board chairs to do is just to focus on the standards themselves.
Yeah.
And really think of ways you can strengthen the board's performance in each of those standards. So that's really what we've been trying to do as an organization this year. In the absence of having the proficiency scales out, we've been dedicating, if you notice, all of our webinars and making sure that there's a direct correlation with one of those standards. And when I go and do board trainings, I often incorporate the standards into what I'm training the board on. So we're trying to keep the standards in the forefront of everybody's mind, and in the process, prepare our boards so that they'll be ready to hopefully meet proficiency or be close to meeting proficiency.
Right.
But it is a little bit challenging not knowing how we're going to be measured and how we're going to be evaluated.
Yeah, exactly. Like and to the point you made that boards won't be held, whatever the wording that they said from the AOE, right? That doesn't. So, I guess I feel silly in that I didn't realize I was supposed to like hand something in to demonstrate what my board has done. I mean, we'll have something. We'll have something in writing by the time we're done, and it will reflect our board goals and all those other types of things. But just kind of key understanding of like the formality of what we're supposed to be doing and all those other types of things, because we are trying to be prepared for this, given July 1 is right around the corner, and that's a real thing that I know I'm pushing my board towards. So just
Right.
I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's just frustrating.
Right. It is frustrating. Well, and the evaluation tool, the rubric, is what you'll be expected to use, and that will
at that
be
time, but I don't know what that's going to say.
Yeah, we don't know what that's going to say. And also I would be remiss if I didn't say this, because the AOE always reminds me of this, that no board or district is expected to be in full compliance on year 1 out of the gate. That they don't expect it to happen in year 1. They even said for the first few years. What does that mean? I don't know. But I think that there is time to work on meeting proficiency. So we don't have to be all scoring at 3s in the year 2025 or 2026.
But what if we're overachievers and we'd like to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm with you on that one, Megan.
Got it. Thank you.
Sue,
Okay,
go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that the VSBA has been checking in with AOE on a regular basis and emphasizing to them how important it is that we have this information. And also, Sandra and I have a meeting with Zoe Saunders and Courtney O'Brien tomorrow on an entirely different topic, but this has spurred me to definitely bring this up in that meeting, because I think it's really important for them to remember to get this to us as soon as possible. What I've heard is that their time has been spent on the governor's transformation plan.
Thank you, Sue. Well, I'm glad everybody found this productive, and that was the thought, that you guys are starting your planning on retreats. So just keep this, we'll keep updating you. Oh, Mel.
Yeah, just quick question. I just want to make sure the districts within the SUs are also doing it separately, right? It's not just an SU thing. It's literally
Correct.
okay.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. But you have to have some alignment to hopefully. Okay. let's move into, if you're, let's try to stay on time. Let's move into the legislative committee update. And then, so we met on March 19, 2025. The attendance to that meeting, we had almost everybody that is on the legislative committee. We discussed the VSA timeline and framework for the incremental changes. That is, it seems like all news right now because we have H54 and we're asking you to send support for that, but we just wanted to make sure that we went through each section, the creation of the working group, the school size, the class size, the tuitioning, and the statewide system, and the statewide leadership. And the committee, what I will read to you is, and I'm going through the minutes, identify a couple of areas of concerns and what happens to school boards. We discussed this and said we needed to first know what the regions were going to be and how it was going to, or the districts, however it ends up. And then we would bring that up. Where is there demonstrated any cost savings as a result of any of the measures proposed by the House or the Senate? And how will all of the CBAs be negotiated, especially in light of the leveling of teacher salaries, which is not on the bill right now. So a lot of this feels like, old news. I just want you to know that we had a very good discussion as a legislative committee. There were other members that are here. Jim was there, Bart was there, Joe was there, Nancy was there. So if I missed anything, please let me know. But I feel like it's more important now that we move into our legislative update because this seems a little bit like old news right now. So, okay. So I'm sending it back to you, Sue.
Okay, for the legislative update?
I think that's where we are, unless I'm wrong.
Yes, that's where we are.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So first did you want me first to just provide under this item a little bit of information about the Title VI certification?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll start with that one. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not specifically legislative, but it's really an important update in case you did not see the email that we sent on Monday and the update in yesterday's weekly email. On April 3rd, the United States Department of Education issued a Title VI certification letter to the Secretary of Education in each state, requiring each secretary to certify compliance with Title VI. And they required that by April 14th in order for school districts to continue receiving federal funds. The day after that, Friday, April 4th, very late in the day, I think it was after 5 p.m., the Vermont Agency of Education sent, and Secretary Saunders in particular, sent an email to all superintendents, providing the certification requirement and stating that the Agency of Education would respond before the deadline. And further, the agency said supervisory unions and supervisory districts must provide certifications to the AOE on or before April 10th to allow us to collect and review all certifications to comply with this deadline. I was in Atlanta at the Council of School Attorneys Conference and the National School Boards Association Conference from last Wednesday through Sunday. So when I was there over the weekend, I was able to connect with attorneys and executive directors from other states on this topic, which was really very helpful. And I contacted Chelsea Myers, the executive director for the Vermont Superintendents Association, to assess the situation. And we thought it was very important to schedule a meeting from first thing Monday morning. So we worked over the weekend to get that meeting set up, and we met at 7:30. It was Flora and I, a few of the VSA trustees, Chelsea, their executive director, Jeff Fannin from the NEA, and I believe that Rebecca McBroom from the NEA was there as well. Excuse me, Jay Nichols, the VPA executive director. And then we had the attorneys that provide a lot of the legal services to, excuse me, school boards in Vermont. It was Chris Leopold, Joe McNeil, Dina Atwood, Pietro Lynn and Heather Lynn. So we were there for half an hour discussing the situation, and we then had Secretary Saunders and Attorney General Charity Clark join us, and they brought a couple of people from each of their teams to the meeting at 8 o'clock. During that, when they were with us, they spent about an hour with us, I would say, and we were able to express concerns with the AOE's approach of having individual districts certify. And we didn't necessarily get any kind of resolution from them during that meeting. So after they left, the four associations there, the VSBA, VPA, VSA, and NEA stayed on, and we agreed to do a follow-up memorandum to the Secretary and the Attorney General, basically thanking them for meeting with us and strongly advocating for a response that's similar to the New York State Department of Education letter. You've probably seen that. They basically said, we've already certified and we're not going to certify again. Every state certifies in connection with their ESSA plan. So we urged them to provide state leadership on this issue as quickly as possible in the memo, rather than requiring these individual superintendent certifications. As the day went on, this was the major issue of the day. Secretary Saunders and Attorney General Clark issued a joint statement on Monday afternoon that really didn't, it supported diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it didn't really give any indication of whether they were going to do anything differently than they had done originally. And then a few hours after that, Secretary Saunders sent an email to superintendents stating that the agency would issue a statewide response and superintendents would not be asked to provide individual certifications. And this reversal, we think, was very important for individual school districts, because there would have been differing certifications around the state based on each district's understanding of what they're certifying to. Is it compliance with Title VI? Is it compliance with the Trump administration's interpretation of Title VI? So state level certification does provide some consistency and some protection for the individual districts. So just wanted to let all of you know about that, how all of that unfolded. And do you want me to just move into the next thing, Flor, or pause for a moment?
We could pause for a moment if people had questions, but if, I think it's a great win for VSBA and VESA, and they worked really hard on this, and we were able to not politicize this issue, which is what we needed for keeping our superintendents, sort of instructional leaders instead of in the middle of emergency meetings. So good job, Sue, and the team. Yeah. It was a team effort. So yeah, let's just move to 480 unless people are dying to.
Jim has his hand up.
Oh, no, Jim, go ahead.
No, that I wasn't going to ask any questions. I was just going to really say thank you, because that was a huge move. I mean, that was very substantial. Took a lot of weight off the shoulders of individual districts, and it would have been a total mess, if they had gone through with the original plan. So that was great work. Just thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, I will move on to H480, the miscellaneous education bill. So this bill passed out of the House with an extension to a deadline for school safety measures that were in Act 29 of 2023. It's now in Senate Education, and Sandra actually will be testifying on this bill tomorrow. She's going to be requesting that some specific language regarding the extension of the deadline for school boards to adopt a behavioral threat assessment policy. Act 29 of 2023 required the Agency of Education to develop a model policy on behavioral threat assessment by December 15th, 2023. It required them to have a kind of a public input process while they were doing that, and also to collaborate with the VSBA. So remember, the deadline that I told you was December 15th, 2023. The AOE issued the model policy in February, I believe, of 2025, and really did not have any meaningful collaboration with the VSBA. We did submit written comments to them on a draft policy back in 2023. Unfortunately, we have been hearing from school boards that the model policy that AOE posted is not implementable. It's not set up in a typical policy format. And so that's what Sandra and I are meeting with the secretary and Courtney O'Brien about tomorrow is that issue of that model policy. And we'd like them to improve it. But one of the issues is that the law says that school boards need to adopt this policy by July 1. So hence the testimony to Senate Ed to ask them to change the deadline for school boards to adopt this. The other thing that Sandra is going to be testifying on this miscellaneous ed bill is some more technical type changes to the law regarding library material selection in schools. And additionally, there was testimony today in Senate Ed. VSBA hasn't been involved in this, but requesting the committee to add cardiac emergency response plan language to the miscellaneous ed bill. So that's something that you might see pop up in that bill. Any questions on the miscellaneous ed bill before I move on? Okay, I'll go to S119. This is a bill that requires the licensure of early childhood educators through the Office of Professional Regulation at the Secretary of State's office. VSBA, VPA, and Vermont NEA are in support of increasing qualifications of early childhood professionals, and we are working with the Secretary of State's office on compromise language that would clarify that application of this license is for private programs only and would improve transparency by using a different title than the professional educator license issued by the AOE, because there's already a professional educator license issued by the AOE. So we're trying to avoid confusion. That is S119, and that's a topic that Sandra's been working really hard on with some of our counterparts. Any questions on S119? Okay, the last one I'm going to cover is H454. That, of course, is the very large bill that is being voted on by the House tomorrow and Friday. It was passed by House Ed last week and House Ways and Means and House Appropriations yesterday. So this bill does a lot of different things. I'll try to cover a whole bunch of them. One of the things it does is create a district boundaries subcommittee of the Commission on the Future of Public Education. And that subcommittee that part of the bill is effective on passage. And that subcommittee is charged with recommending not more than 3 school district boundary proposals to the General Assembly by December 1, 2025. There's a really excellent summary of the bill that the Joint Fiscal Office did that I would definitely refer you to if you want to read a summary of the bill. Another thing that this bill does is impose class size minimums effective July 1, 2026. And those are for grades K through 12 in Vermont public schools. Independent schools that accept public tuition are also proposed to be held to those class size minimums. So these sizes would apply to most school classes, but there would be multiple exclusions for certain types of courses and subjects. And the State Board of Education also could grant a waiver if it determines that a school cannot meet the standards due to geographic isolation, or if it's developed a plan to be able to meet them. So here are the average minimum standards, and these would be averages. Kindergarten, 12 students. Grades 1 through 4, 15 students. Grades 5 through 12, 18 students. And multi-age classrooms for grades K through 8 would be limited to 2 grades per classroom. And as I said, there's a whole bunch of exceptions, including CTE classes would not need to comply with these. Next, Section 6 of the bill requires the State Board of Education to submit a report by December 1, 2026 to the House and Senate Committees on Education with its recommendation for rules to eliminate and a plan for updating rules that are still necessary. And this would include the order that the State Board proposes to update the rules and any associated estimated costs. So the legislature is committing to, giving the State Board the funds that it needs to do this work. Next is school size intent language, and that is effective July 1, 2025. And the important thing to remember is that this is just intent language. It does not require schools to be this size. It's for grades 6 through 12 and schools that are operating grades 6 through 12 and any subset of those grades. States must have a minimum enrollment of 450 students. And again, this is not a requirement now, and it would require significant school construction funding to achieve this intent. Sections 10 through 14 of the bill are effective July 1, 2026, and that creates a state aid for school construction program. Effective July 1, 2025, tuition to approved schools. Section 18 would add qualifiers for permitted payments of tuition. A school district would not be able to pay tuition to any entity unless it is one of the following. The first would be a public school located in Vermont. Next is an approved independent school located in Vermont that has at least 51% of its student enrollment composed of students attending on a district-funded tuition basis during the 2024-2025 school year, so this school year, and complies with the minimum class size requirements. And I would also add that independent schools remain eligible for the same geographic isolation waiver for this requirement as public schools. Then the other entities that are allowed to receive tuition are an independent school meeting education quality standards, a tutorial program approved by the state board, an approved education program, a public school located in another state, and a therapeutic approved independent school located in Vermont or another state or country and is approved under the laws of that state or country. And lastly, under tuition, Section 19 would permit the payment of tuition for students currently enrolled in all independent schools to continue until those students graduate. Section 27 is about tuition calculation. It's effective July 1, 2026, and would amend the determination of the amount of tuition a district pays to a receiving school. The tuition would be equal to the base amount of the foundation formula multiplied by the weighted pupil count attending the school. Sections 31 through 33 require development of a special education strategic plan by the agency of education. More particularly, Section 31 requires AOE to submit a report to the legislature by September 21 of this year on the factors contributing to growth in extraordinary special education costs. And then Section 32 requires AOE to develop a 3-year strategic plan on special education, and the plan would have to be submitted on or before December 1, 2025, and then on or before January 15th of the next 5 years, for the next 4 years, AOE would be required to submit a detailed update on the strategic plan's implementation to the legislature. I'm getting close to the end here, but there's really a lot more in this bill, but I'm trying to give you a summary. Section 34 through 56 would repeal most of Vermont's statewide education finance formula and establish a new funding formula and statewide property tax structure. Unless otherwise noted, these sections take effect on July 1, 2029, provided that the new school districts contemplated in the bill have assumed responsibility for the education of all resident students. So this would only take effect if new school districts are going into effect. And those, we don't really know what they're going to be yet because we're waiting for the district boundary subcommittee to make their 3 proposals to the legislature, and the legislature is going to be talking about that next year. In the new funding formula, school districts would receive an education opportunity payment. That is the foundation base amount, which will be calculated by multiplying the base amount by a district's weighted long-term membership. Eligible districts would also receive sparse school district grants, reflecting the enrollment of public schools in the district, and small school grants for schools that are small by necessity. And that would be defined by state board rule, what small by necessity is. Statewide education property taxes would continue to fund the education fund. Amending current law, this bill would separate property tax classes into 4 categories that could be charged different education property tax rates in the future. And as included in the bill currently, all classes would have a uniform tax rate. The current law property tax credit would be repealed and replaced with an income-based homestead exemption. Lastly, school districts would be permitted to spend above their education opportunity payment if approved by local voters. And they're going to refer to this as supplemental district spending. So we're glad they got away from the term excess spending. This would be raised through a local supplemental district spending tax rate that would be calculated in a manner so that all districts could raise the same amount above the foundation formula at the same rate, regardless of their property wealth. And this equalization of taxing capacity would result in excess revenues for school districts with greater tax capacity. Those excess revenues would be recaptured and held in reserve for eventual deposit in the school construction aid special fund. And so that is the verbal summary I'm going to give you. If you're interested in a written summary, there is an excellent written summary that was developed by the Joint Fiscal Office, and it includes also what their thoughts are as to the fiscal impacts of the bill. And I can put a link to that in the chat if you would like.
That'd be great. So if you could put that link in the chat. Any questions for Sue? I know that Dan wants to make a statement, so I'm going to go questions first, Dan, and then I will let you go. Is that okay? So questions, Michael?
I actually have more of a statement than a question, probably.
Oh, okay. Anybody has questions on 454 or any of the other ones before so Mel, do you have a question? You're muted.
Sorry, I have my notes app and I keep flipping back and forth and it misses the mute. I know that new district boundaries are going to be drawn, and I'm trying to find that in the new H454, but it looks like it still identifies it as 5 boundaries. Do you know of it specifying it any differently?
Oh, no, it's not 5.
Okay.
It lists some factors that they need to consider. I think it's like 7 or 8 factors at least that they need to consider.
Okay.
And
So
I can find those in a moment here.
Yeah, I'm wondering could you send a link to the latest one also? Because I feel like
oh, sure,
must be looking at not the latest.
Yeah, and it may change a little bit. There's going to be some floor amendments proposed tomorrow, I've heard. So it may change by the time, if it even does pass the House. It's kind of unsure whether it's going to pass.
Okay, just in like 2 more questions. Does it specify in the bill what the 4 determinants are for the taxes? It said there'd be 4 different tax rates. Is that?
Oh, yes,
there?
yes.
Okay, so look for that.
Yeah.
And can you maybe help me understand maybe layman's term, any money that a local district wants to raise above the amount that is determined by the funding formula. I think you use the term recapturing that funds and putting it into the school construction aid. So I don't understand how if a district wants to raise more funds to pay for the education, wouldn't that money go towards the education? I don't understand how that money is going into a construction fund.
It would go, but if the district, depending on the property wealth of the district, and the way the tax rates are going to be set, it may be that the district raises more than what it needs for that purpose. And so the extra is going to go into this school construction fund.
So if a district wants a set amount of money, they actually need to raise more than that set amount of money so that some can go into a construction fund and some can stay with the district.
I'm not sure if I would characterize it that way. I think it would probably be helpful to have it explained by the Joint Fiscal Office. This is how they explain it though in their short explanation.
Yeah, I have that. That's
yeah.
what I've been looking through, and
Yeah.
to me, I'm having a hard time making heads or tails of that statement.
Can I
Thank
offer an opinion, Mel, about that? I'm sorry to jump in.
Yeah.
I think the intent is to create different tax rates for that. It's not excess spending. I'm sorry, I can't remember what it is. Supplemental.
Yeah.
So a lower spending community with less property wealth would be able to raise supplemental funds at a certain tax rate, while a community with higher property wealth would be able to raise supplemental funds at a different tax rate.
Right.
That's what I think it's
And
going on.
Essentially, they're setting the tax rate at the rate that would be required for the lowest property wealth district out there. And that would be the same rate for every district that wanted to raise funds. So since it's, the tax rate would raise enough funds for the district with the least property wealth. So if you had a district with more property wealth, they would be raising more funds. So there's it's kind of like the old, it's less defined than the old, getting double taxed or something. It's actually, it all depends upon how the districts are drawn and what your property wealth is in your district, how much you're being penalized.
But you're still raising more than you need.
You're raising more than you'll get.
Yeah.
You're still raising more than you'll get.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like an improved excess spending.
Yeah.
That's the way it's expensive to do it above, it's not going to be.
Okay.
But I'm not the expert. That's what I understand from.
And Mel, I have the information about what the district boundary subcommittee has to consider.
It looks like you might have dropped something in the chat. Is that what that is?
No, I put in the chat the link to the summary.
Right. Okay.
Yep. So the district boundary subcommittee has, like I said, eight things that it has to consider. And, those range from increasing equitable access, maximizing opportunity for modern regional middle and high schools with the least disruption to students, providing access to career and technical education for all eligible students, providing access to education for their resident students in grades K through 12, to the extent practical, not separate towns within school districts as those boundaries exist on July 1, 2025. Talks about considering availability of regional services for students such as designated agencies. This is the part about the number of students is to the extent practical result in school districts with a minimum average daily membership of approximately 4,000 students. To the extent practical, consider historic attendance patterns in geographic areas that do not operate public schools at all grade levels, from grade kindergarten through 12. Make recommendations for optimal location of schools, including CTE programs, to meet the requirements of this act. So.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you for that.
You're welcome.
All right. So I'm going to let Dan has a comment and then you can go, Michael. Your internet is back, Dan. I see you. So
yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, of course. Wouldn't you know it? Right about that moment, that's when it all crashes out. But anyway, I will make this quick. Thanks, Sue. It really is an amazing bill. It has a lot of stuff in it. My comments have more to do with the governance section of it than they do with the finance section. I think that's it looks reasonable to me, and I think it has potential. But I have been encouraged by recent education governance work at Senate Ed Committee, which they've just been working on the last few days, and it puts more emphasis than H454 does on increasing the size and usefulness of supervisory unions. I believe that that SU structures being larger could allow more small schools in rural communities to work within the larger SUs and yet maintain some semblance of community control. The Senate is also not at this point proposing class size and school size minimums, which, if H454 is passed as currently drawn, could mean that many of our smallest and most rural schools would be on the chopping block. Yes, I know there are waivers involved, but that's always dicey. As Flor pointed out earlier, it's unclear, even from what the Joint Fiscal Office says, that there would really be any savings because of the need to build newer, larger school buildings and transporting kids. So I hope that the VSBA will recognize the importance of the many school board members who live in and work for small rural schools and will be responsive to these schools and communities. Senate will be looking at ways to support smaller schools and keep them viable, and I hope that VSBA Legislative Committee will look carefully at the Senate work and support their efforts. So thank you. I appreciate that, Flora, letting me read that.
Thanks, Dan. Michael?
My comment is along the same lines. Supporting this bill is not going to go over well out here. The bills, basically, there's a Joint Fiscal Office estimates about 180 schools would be subject to closure under this bill, under the class size minimums and other provisions. All of the schools out here would be subject to closure. And it is not by any means sure that the waivers would be granted. So I think there's definitely the big push for this particular bill is not going over well out here. And I just want people to be aware that in many areas, and I think we're not unique, you know, even though it's a you know, aspirational or goal to have the 450 student schools, it really looks like and feels like an effort to just shut down schools like all the ones out here in Grand Isle County. So we can't, you know, obviously we got a complication because the organization supporting it. I don't think it's getting a lot of support from other board members out here.
Thanks, Michael. Mark?
Yeah, just more of a statement. My board just met on Monday and we had our state representatives in for about an hour worth of grilling. And the two things that kind of came up were the list that Sue just read with what the subcommittee should be looking at for redistricting. One of the things that seemed missing was time on a bus. Like how long is a student going to have to be traveling? And that led into a more global thought of most of the bills, the governor's original one and what's coming down the pike right now, really seem mostly focused on how does this impact taxpayers, not how does this impact students. So that was just some concerns that were brought up during our discussion a couple days ago.
Any more questions or comments on the legislative update? You know, we have a diversity of thought. We want to respect that. You know, I know that as we said, we are not always all gonna agree, but we need to have some consensus to be able to move forward. And we understand that we respect each other. We're gonna have different points of view. So thank you all for sharing your points of view. I'm gonna move us into the awards committee, and then I'm gonna give you a 5-minute break, or I could give you a 5-minute break if people need to use the restroom or something right now, and then we finish the awards committee and the appointment to the resolutions. Would people appreciate a 5-minute break to use the bathroom and get a glass of water? Yes or no? I don't see any. Yes. Okay. Let's take, so it's 7 o'clock. Let's come back at 7:05. Okay. Okay.
I am
I was not at the last meeting, so I'm hoping Neil's willing to speak up for us.
Okay, so the awards committee report is now been transferred to trustee Neil from Mel. Go ahead, Neil.
And the awards committee report is in your packet. So we met at the last meeting, shared with you all our recommendations for revision for the Board Excellence Award. Took your feedback and then went back and massaged some of the language around the Board Excellence Award. And you see that revised language in your packet this evening. I will pause there, I guess, and ask if anybody has any questions on what you saw in the revised language for the award in the packet.
I don't see any hands up.
That sort of consensus is rare, and I love it. What I will add is, so there's one, I would say, final bit of language that we are working on, and it is in the award criteria area. A couple of the categories referenced DEI. And as you all know, that has become a very hot topic as of recently. And so we are taking a look at that language to see if there's some possible modifications that would be prudent for us to make. The language basically is looking to represent those items, but maybe using some different wording, some different language, but does not represent a shift of the VSBA's position on the importance of these of this work and those items. So I was hoping this evening, maybe with the board's approval, that the awards committee can continue to refine that language. And it's really the last bullet item. And I can actually, Flora, let me know. I don't know if you have time tonight. I can share some draft language for those last two bullet items tonight, or I can share that with the board separately offline. And maybe if we want to, we can just get together at the next meeting for final approval, if that fits.
Yeah, I think we can include it in the next packet, because we have time and we will be in person, and then we will approve it then, so that, because my understanding is you are hoping to send this off, is it May 15th? When is it that is going out? No, when, Debbie, when is it that you want it out?
Well, the nominations will open on May 1st.
Okay, so then
and
we
it's
should do it now.
So we should
Do it
approve,
now.
finalize that language, or if the board wants the committee to give the committee the authority to do that, that's an option.
Yeah, so here's my thought, right? I think that by and large, the award criteria it's not going to change much from what you see in the packet. It's really the final bullet points in two of the categories that reference DEI. The process, the nomination, the way that works, that's all not going to change, because I'm looking around and I'm seeing everybody in broad agreement here. I would actually argue that we could probably put the notice out on May 1st that the award is now open for nominations. The board could then finalize the specific wording in the criteria at their May meeting, knowing that that's going to be a couple of weeks after after we open up the nominations. But I don't think that materially would change submissions or the process, really.
I guess, Neil, I'd be more comfortable if we just approve the process and give authority to the committee to change that. You had shared with Sue and myself a little bit about that language, and I think it's pretty easy to make it more inclusive and to just change that language, and then you, Debbie, will have the full packet together to be shared. So if the board is comfortable with making a motion to approve the awards committee, the Board Excellence Award, or however we want to phrase that, have a motion to approve it, and at the same time give authority to the awards committee to do the necessarily work smithing on DEI. And is that I think that will be cleaner, and then you guys just go ahead and do it. I think the majority of the board will trust you and Mel and the rest of the committee
Can
to
I,
do
I
with
want to
Debbie.
speak to that also and just say, if we put it out with, I would be a little bit more uncomfortable putting it out, and then editing the language after it's already been put out, in case that language gets included in somebody's application, because we specifically had it in there. Somebody might be chomping at the bit and want to fill it out May 2nd. So if we can make that change prior to going out, I feel like
So that's what we were saying, like, you guys will have the
I'm
authority.
saying yes, please, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. So is somebody willing to make that motion? I don't know, Bart, you were, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to give the awards committee the leeway to modify the language as needed to accept the award prior to accepting award nominations or applications.
So
Second.
we are, okay, thank you. Okay, so Bart and Jim, so the committee, and just to make clear, because the motion might not be clear, we're accepting the work,
Yeah.
the work of the work committee. So we're accepting the recommendation of our committee and giving them the liberty, change the language.
Yes.
As said on that vote.
Totally agree. Yep.
All right. Okay. So we have made Amy really confused, but I know she's got this. So Bart moved and Jim second. Any more discussion? Good, I didn't totally make you dizzy. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand, right? Feel the ayes. Any opposed? I don't see any opposed and any abstentions. Okay, and I don't see you, Lisa, so I'm just assuming you are all thumbs up. Okay, so that part is done, and now we're gonna move, sorry, to move back into, so now is the appointments to the resolution committee. So I have to move to a different document, 1 second.
Flor, do you want me to read what it says in the bylaws?
Yeah, that sounds great. So,
Okay. So Article 10 addresses committees of the Board of Directors. The Resolutions Committee is a standing committee of the board and consists of the Vice President, who shall serve as chair, and one representative from each region. This committee will solicit and recommend positions to the Board of Directors for action by membership at the association's annual meeting. Article 11 states that the regional representatives will select which one of them will serve on the Resolutions Committee. And Article 16 explains that the Resolution Committee shall meet prior to the annual meeting to consider all proposed resolutions it has received. The committee shall make a recommendation to pass or do not pass each resolution submitted by a member school board. The committee may submit a proposed resolution to the annual meeting with a statement that it takes no position on the proposal. The committee may develop its own resolutions, which shall be included in its report to the Board of Directors, and if approved by the board, shall be presented to the annual meeting as recommendations of the board. The committee shall prepare a report of resolutions and its recommendations, which shall be presented to the Board of Directors. Each member board shall be notified of the recommendations made by the Board of Directors at least 30 days prior to the annual meeting.
thank you, Sue. So with that, I'm just gonna go region by region. So the central region, Bart, is it gonna be you or Emily?
I will jump on that unless Emily
Okay.
has a burning.
Yeah. No, so, okay. So Bart, Western Chittenden region. Don't jump so quickly. Okay, I'm gonna come back to that. Kingdom South, we have Mark because he has to chair it. Eastern Chittenden region. Volunteers.
I can do it unless Tara really wants to.
I did it last year, Beck, and you're welcome to step in.
I'll do it this year. Thank you.
All right, so we have Megan. Right, and then Addison region.
I'm going to do it.
Okay, Suzanne. Kingdom North region.
Floor, I'm going to do it.
Thank you, Gaston, for always volunteering for this. In Wyndham region, I never say that right, sorry. Wyndham region? Wyndham, who is going to volunteer?
It's been Dan, but I'm happy to step in.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Franklin region.
That would
Jack?
be.
I'm
Is it?
willing to do it, but if you've been doing it, Michael, I'm fine with that.
I could do it again.
Yeah, I would. You have more experience with that, so I'll do it another time. Thanks.
Michael, Bennington region.
I'll do it for Bennington.
Thank you, Jim. Rutland. Nancy's not here.
I did it last year, but if Lisa wants to do it this year, it's fine. I don't see her. Is she on the phone?
I don't see her anymore. Let me see. No, she's not on the participants. Maybe she dropped off to a meeting or something. So should we put you, Linda?
Yeah, just put me down.
Okay. In Windsor?
Yeah, I can do it.
Neil. Okay, great, Neil. All right. So we have everybody with the exception of the Western Chittenden, and we'll connect with them. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So now I guess I'm looking for a motion for appointing the members as read, but I think Amy has the note. We have them all written down. So could I have a motion
I'll
to
make a motion to approve all of the appointments to the resolution committee as taken down by Flora on her iPad.
Amy? All right.
I will second that.
Okay, so Jim and Bart. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Right? Any opposed? Hearing none, we have resolutions committee. Thank you, board. All right. Yeah, now we're gonna move into the Jim. So the Vermont Pension Investment Commission representative report, which we included, it was sent after, but Jim, if you want to say a couple of things and then open it to questions.
Yeah, no, I wanted to, we picked the perfect time to talk about investments because everything's so calm out there. It's kind of nice to see, but the Pension Investment Commission, so I've been on it for a few years, and you'll see that, it's vice chaired actually by Kim Gleason, one of our former VSBA members. It's kind of fun sitting on that with Kim. Just wanted to, sent out the annual report for our fiscal year is the same as the state. It's, June 30th or July 1st to June 30th. So sent out the last annual report, which has to be provided to the legislature each year, just to give you an idea of kind of what if you want to get more in depth, give you an idea of kind of how things are going. Just to kind of give you, I think for school board members, it's good to have a couple of different bits available. One is being on VPEC. I've really enjoyed it, and I think it's good to have a school representative because VPEC oversees the investment for the teachers, for the state employees, and for the municipal employees. And we also, we have an impact, being involved with it. We're overseeing the investments, but we're also associated with all of the actuarial work done on the pensions themselves. So able to kind of give you guys an update on, how the health of the pension funds overall. A lot of you will know that the situation we have with all of the pension funds is they continue to be underfunded. That really that was brought about by the legislature not agreeing to put money into it as they should have a number of years ago. And in more recent years, they've been having to play catch up, and they actually have added some funds to each of the funds in recent years. Then we also have the benefit of the investment of those funds has actually been pretty good in recent years. So if you go back to just looking at the state teachers retirement system, back in 2020, this will sound scary, but back in 2020, the amount of funds in the state teachers retirement system versus what was deemed to be required to pay out all of its obligations, it was at a funded state of 51%, where it only had 51% of the money that was deemed necessary to cover the obligations. This last year, we're up to 61%. So we're making significant headway. That is because of additional monies put in by the legislature. It's also the Investment Commission. I've been really impressed. They do a very good job. The results, as you'll see from that report, results are, just as markets over the past week have been drastically up and down, over time, markets are up and down. The results produced by the Pension Commission, for those funds has, varied. In 2022, it was a horrible year for markets. Actually, that was the worst, and it was down by, we actually lost 7.7%, and we beat most of the people we're measured against. This past year, we had a positive 10.21%. The year before, 7.38%. And, going back to 2021, we kind of knocked it out of the park with almost 25% return. So over the past 5 years, the Pension Investment Commission has to decide on a rate that you assume you can earn. Every pension fund does this, and that's kind of decreased over the years, the rate that we use. And this is just to measure, this is a long-term investment approach. And the rate that we use, which is pretty consistent with others, is looking for a 7% return on investment. Over the past 5 years, with some real volatility, the investment returns have been 7.9%. Going through from July 1st of 2024 through the end of February, the last numbers we had, we were actually up about 6.3% for the year. And so, expecting to, hopefully still by June 30th, maybe, it has been a major roller coaster in recent days. But that's why the approach of investing this, the Vermont Pension Investment Commission, the chief investment officer is really good. It's this huge staff of 4 people overseeing $7 billion of investments, but with outside help. But the main focus of it is to come up with a solid long-term plan for investments, which they have. It's worked very well. They're not stock pickers. They basically, it's a sensible long-term approach. They view it as it's really, the whole game is asset allocation and ensuring that you have a chance of producing a good, return, the best returns you can within an acceptable level of risk. And so the performance has been extremely good. The approach, just to kind of dig a little bit more in, I won't go too far, but the approach back when the current chief investment officer came in, they had investments all over the place, and I don't think they even knew what they really had. The chief investment officer, Eric Henry, who's been there, plus the chair of the commission, are really good people, and they kind of cleaned the whole thing up. Went to essentially the the portfolio is made up of really three buckets. One is a growth bucket that 70% of money's into getting growth, and that's in equity indexes. It's also in, we really get the boost for our returns from having about 25% that's into private equity, private credit. So these are markets that you're giving up liquidity of your investment, but the returns on those investments tend to be pretty consistently dramatically higher. You may have noticed that in the 2025 annual report, the VPIC had kind of a, was really proud of the distinction of the VPIC's 10-year private equity return was over 20%. And it was actually, nationally, out of all public pension plans, they came in #1 for a 10-year return. So it's really been doing very well. But that 70% is in the growth, then 19% is in downturn hedging assets. So, that really is basically bonds. It's in high quality bonds. And then there's also 11% of the portfolio is put into inflation hedges, things like treasury, tips. It's also in infrastructure, farmland, things that do well, even if you have an inflationary environment. So it's a well thought out portfolio. It's been performing very well. And, it has had a significant impact on bringing that funded ratio for the teachers from 51 to 61%. Is also just to kind of make people understand the money that we're going to pay out to teachers. This is pretty typical of pension funds, are all around. But the money that gets paid out to teachers, people always think it's the employer and employee putting in the money to get paid back. The truth of it is, pretty typical. Of the money that they're going to get paid, 61% of that comes from investment income. About 27% comes from the employer contribution, and about 12% comes from employee contributions over time. So, the real important thing is, continue to have a solid, consistent, not overreacting sort of approach to investment. And just want to say that VPIC has been doing, sitting on the commission, I'm impressed. I like being a part of it. But, what really, gives me great comfort is, they're definitely providing significant value for the state, because to the extent if investments weren't going well, then we'd all be paying more every year from the employer bucket into these funds just to try to keep up. Also that, while we've gone from 51 to 61%, part of the law is that you have to have a plan to get to 100% on, really it's sort of a, this was set a few years back, but over a period of let's say another, 15, 20 years, it's like a 30-year plan to get to 100%. We're making progress on that. And so things are going in the right direction, but we've got a bit of a hole still to dig out of. So that's my overview. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for all that work. Any questions for Jim besides gratitude? I know we're between dinner and pension.
Yep.
So
Dinner wins over pension, yes.
Okay, so thank you, Jim. Thank you for all that work. We're gonna move into the strategic monitoring report, and we're focusing on the stakeholder engagement, and I'll pass it on to Amy first.
Thanks, Flora. So the first topic under this section is about VSBA board members and the regional communications that you all sent out for us. On April 4th, we sent out the latest one, which was on the resolutions process. So far, 6 of 11 regions have sent the communication. If you sent yours, thank you very much. Please make sure that you update the communication log after you send it, just so that we can keep track of which ones have gone out. And we do have a couple upcoming topics. I'm going to send one out on the Board Excellence Award in late April, and then another one in mid-May, which will be an introduction and a welcome to the new board members combined with letting folks know about the new Board Member Academy. And then I will pass it over to Debbie to talk about the annual conference.
Thanks, Amy. So really quickly, the annual conference, as you know, we're changing the venue this year. We're actually going to be in Burlington at the DoubleTree by Hilton. And the conference will be one day, as it was last year, one full day. And that date, so you get out your calendars, mark this date, Thursday, October 30th. That's the day of the conference. And then on Wednesday, the 29th, the day before, there'll be a pre-conference workshop that will enable the school board chairs and superintendents to help meet their training requirements. And also there will be a banquet dinner that same night. And just in case you're dying to know what the theme is this year, it is effective board superintendent relationships and partnership. So that was KR 112. KR 113 is also one that I track, and that's the awards program. And I won't spend any time on this one because we just had a great update from Mel and Neil about what all the hard work that this committee has done since January. It's been a lot. It's been a big lift. So I just want to let the board know what an amazing job this very small but mighty committee has done. The Stafford Bell Award is completely revamped. The Board Excellence Award, as you just heard, is getting ready to launch on May 1st. So our goal in this indicator is to get 12 boards to be nominated. So we'll just see how we do. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Debbie. Back to Amy, I think.
Yep. So the next one is K114 about our weekly emails that we send out. Our average open rate for March of 2025 was a 3% increase over March of 2024. Overall averages have generally been between plus or minus 1 to 3 percentage points from the previous year, with the exception of a small dip for the month of January 25. And then the next KR is 115, which is about the negotiations toolkit. We've continued to have members utilizing the toolkit. The average monthly visitors since August has been 44, with a high in October of 140 and a low in December of 10. And then I'm going to pass that over to Sue to talk about statewide healthcare.
Thanks, Amy. KR 1.2.2 is the statewide healthcare, and VSBA is working with a lobbying firm to support legislative work related to addressing the cost of public school employees' health benefits, specifically the statewide bargaining process as it is outlined in the law. I am scheduled to testify on Friday in the Senate Education Committee on this topic, and I have really been including this topic in every piece of testimony possible, which has been almost every single one, highlighting it as a cost driver in school budgets. So we're working hard on that. And the next one that I can cover is KR 1.2.3. That's collaboration and leadership. And just wanted to talk about some of the ways that we do collaborate with the Agency of Education and other education partners. We're continuing to promote partnership with the AOE on several topics, such as DQS, which we talked about tonight, EQS, and required model policies. We're working closely with VSBA and VSA to prepare for meetings of the Commission on the Future of Public Education. And at times, we've been submitting written public comments to that commission. We have a standing weekly meeting with VSBA and VSA to increase communication, coordination, and collaboration. And in addition, we really help VSA quite a bit with their Superintendent Academy by doing presentations to that Superintendent Academy when they ask us to present on particular topics. Sandra has been meeting with the VSA and the Vermont School Libraries Association to finalize the new required model policy addressing the selection of library materials. And she's been collaborating with the Vermont Curriculum Leaders Association to update the recommended model policy on selection and access to instructional materials. And then the last thing I would note is that during the 2025 legislative session, I have been attending and with the executive committee, regular every other week meetings with our counterparts at the VSA, VPA, and Vermont NEA to identify common areas of concern or possible areas of agreement well, first of all, common areas of concern with the governor's proposal and possible common areas of agreement for any counter proposals. So we are meeting, that group is meeting on a regular basis. And I'll turn it back to you, Flor, for the consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any questions for them? We continue to advance in our strategic plan date. We have awesome people working. So any questions for them? Otherwise, let's move to the consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the March minutes. Go ahead, Mel.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Mel. Second by
I'll second.
Okay.
Everybody.
Thank you, Jim. It's between Jim and Joe, but it's just like, okay. So we have a motion in a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. And we're at new business. Anything that you guys want to bring up? Okay, so we're gonna adjourn 6 minutes late, but we did it.
Hey, Flor, could I mention two things?
Oh, yeah. The next meeting is in person. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So the May 14th board meeting is in person at the VSBA office. So we're really looking forward to seeing all of you May 14th. And then we are sending out a survey for the VSBA board self-evaluation on May 2nd. And that will be due by May 16th. So keep an eye on your email for that board self-evaluation survey.
Okay.
Flora,
Yes.
I
go
would
ahead.
just add that Flora and Sue and I were at the NSBA annual conference this past weekend. And boy, there was just so much angst out there. And it was so nice to connect with people that really get it about public education and how this is really basically unfair. And we need to fight the fight, even if we take positions that might make us a lightning rod. You know, you just have to speak up and just say it and get it out there. And there was a lot of collaboration. There was a lot of, slaps on the back, keep it up. Tough times, but the whole nation is going through this. It's not just us. So it's good.
Yeah, and I didn't think we had time today, so we didn't include anything about at the NSBA conference, but we will share with you some highlights at a later time. But we thought the agenda was pretty packed already. But it's like Mark said, it's really nice to collaborate with the rest of the country and see how, we're very similar in so many ways and how that interconnection is so important on behalf of all our students around the country. So thank you, everybody, for good work. Let's adjourn by consensus. Everybody have a great dinner. Thank you for being here and for all you do. Send emails to your House representatives tonight. Okay.